I'm Sarah Miller.
I'm 28, a nurse who works long nights and barely has time to breathe.
But tonight, none of that mattered.
What mattered was the single sheet of paper I found on my mom's kitchen counter. Her handwriting was there. Her signature too. And another name, Jessica.
My sister.
The golden child. My favorite. My chest tightened.
I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The cabin. Dad's cabin.
The only thing he ever built with his own hands.
Gone. Signed away. And I wasn't even asked. Why would she do this? Why now?
I could still smell Dad's cologne on that old wood. And now it felt like he was being stolen from me all over again. But the truth hiding behind that signature, that was the part that terrified me. What do you think the secret is? Comment your guesses, like this video, and subscribe if you love seeing underdogs finally take their power back.
I couldn't sleep that night.
The paper with Mom's signature burned in my mind like it had been branded there. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the loop of her handwriting next to Jessica's name. My favorite. The one who never lifted a finger yet somehow always got rewarded. By morning, I was shaking from rage and exhaustion. I didn't even bother getting dressed properly. I threw on a sweater over my scrubs from the night shift and drove straight to Mom's house.
My heart hammered the whole way.
I was rehearsing what I'd say, but the truth was, no amount of rehearsing could soften the blow of what she had done. She had taken the one thing Dad left me, the only piece of him I still had, and she gave it away like it was nothing. When I pulled into the driveway, Mom's car was parked neatly in the same spot it always was. The sight of it made my stomach twist. I marched up the front steps and shoved open the door without knocking. She was in the kitchen, calmly pouring herself coffee like her world wasn't on fire. "Why did you do it?" My voice cracked, harsher than I'd meant it, but I couldn't stop the words. "Why did you give the cabin to Jessica without even asking me?" She didn't even flinch. She stirred sugar into her mug, slow, deliberate, like I hadn't just accused her of betrayal. "You're being dramatic, Sarah," she said finally, not looking at me. "It's just a cabin."
Just a cabin. My throat tightened. That place wasn't just wood and nails. It was Dad.
It was summers spent by the lake, him teaching me how to fish, how to fix a leak in the roof, how to sand the porch until it gleamed. Every memory that mattered lived inside those walls. "It wasn't yours to give," I said, my voice trembling.
"It was Dad's. And he wanted it for me. You know that."
She finally turned, mug in hand, her eyes sharp and cold.
"Your father isn't here anymore. I'm the one who has to make decisions.
And Jessica needs it more than you do." The way she said it, like I was selfish for even questioning her, made my blood boil.
Need it more than me? She doesn't even care about that place. She's never cared.
Mom sipped her coffee.
Calm. Detached. Like she was discussing the weather.
"You've always been too sentimental, Sarah.
Clinging to the past. Jessica has plans. She knows how to use her opportunities.
You should be proud of her."
Proud? The word felt like a slap. I wasn't proud.
I was furious. "You didn't even tell me," I whispered. "You just went behind my back and signed it away." Mom tilted her head, the faintest smile tugging at her lips.
"Because I knew how you'd react. Exactly like this. Selfish. Making everything about you."
That word, selfish, hit me harder than anything else. My chest caved in, and for a second I couldn't breathe. All my life, I had worked. I had scraped by, covering my own bills, paying off student loans, working double shifts at the hospital just to stay afloat. Jessica? She bounced from one failed job to the next, always with Mom cushioning her fall. If anyone had been selfish, it was her. Yet here I was, being painted as the villain. "I'm not selfish," I said through clenched teeth. "I'm the only one in this family who's ever actually earned anything." Her smile disappeared, replaced with steel. "Careful, Sarah. You don't want to make enemies in your own blood."
The warning hung in the air like poison.
She turned her back on me, rinsing her cup in the sink, ending the conversation as if it were over. But it wasn't.
Not for me. The screen door creaked, and I turned.
Jessica strolled in, her hair perfectly styled, her nails freshly painted. She looked like she had stepped out of a salon instead of real life.
She saw me standing there, and her lips curled into a smirk.
Well, she said, tossing her purse onto the counter, I was wondering when you'd find out.
I stared at her, speechless. She didn't even try to deny it.
You should thank me, she added, leaning against the counter like she owned the place.
I'm going to take good care of the cabin.
Better than you ever could.
Something inside me snapped.
You don't care about that cabin, Jessica. You just care about money.
She laughed.
Actually, I laughed.
Of course I care about money. Who doesn't?
And now, thanks to Mom, I have something valuable I can finally use.
The room tilted. My stomach lurched.
What are you talking about? I asked. Her smile widened. She straightened, her voice dripping with arrogance.
I'm selling it, Sarah. The cabin's going on the market next week. And when it sells, the profit is mine. My ears rang. My vision blurred. For a moment, I thought I might actually faint. The cabin. Dad's cabin. The only place I had left of him. Gone. Just like that.
Jessica pushed past me, humming under her breath, as if she hadn't just set my entire world on fire. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about a piece of property.
This was war.
When Mom called, her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. She said she wanted to bring the family together and clear the air. I knew better than to believe her, but a part of me still hoped.
Maybe she had realized she'd gone too far.
Maybe there was still a shred of decency left in her, some part of her that cared about fairness, about me.
Against my better judgment, I said yes.
The whole drive over, I argued with myself.
Half of me whispered that I was walking into a trap.
The other half clung to this pathetic little thread of hope that I'd finally hear the words I'd been craving. I'm sorry, Sarah.
You were right.
The cabin should have been yours. When I pulled into the driveway, my chest tightened. Every light in the house was on, glowing like a beacon. Through the windows, I could see the dining room table set with Mom's fancy china.
She only brought it out for show.
For Christmases, Thanksgivings, and the kind of dinners where appearances mattered more than honesty.
The door opened before I even knocked.
Mom was there in her pressed blouse and pearls, like she was auditioning for some picture-perfect role.
She kissed me on the cheek, her smile bright and brittle. I'm so glad you came, Sarah. Tonight is about healing. Healing. The word tasted sour.
Inside, the smell of roasted chicken and garlic bread filled the air.
My stomach twisted.
Food had always been Mom's weapon, feeding us, distracting us, and making it harder to argue when our mouths were full. Rachel was already at the table, swirling wine in her glass like she owned the room. She looked up when I walked in, smirking, as if she knew I was the uninvited guest in my own family.
Wow, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You actually showed up.
Brave of you.
I clenched my jaw and sat down at the far end of the table.
Mom carried the serving dishes out one by one, humming like everything was normal. My brother Mark was there too, quiet as always, eyes darting between us like he wished he could be anywhere else. The clinking of silverware echoed in the silence as we started eating. I could barely taste the food. My mind was spinning, waiting for the moment Mom would bring it up. Finally, she set her fork down, folded her hands neatly, and looked around the table. I wanted us all here tonight, she began, her tone warm, rehearsed. Because family means everything to me, and I think we need to support each other now more than ever.
My heart thudded. This was it.
I know there have been misunderstandings, she went on, glancing at me like I was the problem child, but I want us to focus on the positives. On how proud I am of Jessica for stepping up and taking responsibility. I froze. My knife slipped against the plate, screeching.
Proud. Proud of Jessica. For what? For stealing what wasn't hers?
For deciding to sell Dad's cabin for profit? My chest burned. Jessica leaned back in her chair, basking in it, like a queen being crowned.
She raised her glass.
Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his fork clinking against his plate.
He didn't say anything, though. He never did. I swallowed hard.
So that's what this dinner is about? You bringing us here just to praise Rachel while ignoring the fact that she's robbing me of everything Dad left? Mom's eyes narrowed, her smile tight. Sarah, please.
This isn't the time for outbursts.
Outbursts. My voice cracked, rising. You called me here saying you wanted to talk things out, but all I've heard is how proud you are of Rachel.
Proud of what? Lying?
Selling off Dad's memory. The air in the room turned heavy. Rachel set her glass down, slow and deliberate, and turned toward me with that same smug grin that made me want to scream. You know what your problem is, she said, her voice sweet but cutting.
You're always playing the victim.
Always acting like the world owes you something just because you worked a few extra shifts or struggled to pay your bills. Newsflash, Sarah, nobody cares.
My throat tightened. Heat crept up my neck.
You think Dad left that cabin for you because you deserve it, she went on, her words like knives.
Please. You've always been a burden. On him, on Mom, on this entire family.
And deep down, you know it.
The words landed like a slap.
I felt the blood drain from my face.
My fork clattered onto the plate.
The room went dead silent except for Jessica's laughing, sharp and cruel, echoing in my ears. I stared at her, my vision blurring, and for the first time in my life, I realized she wasn't just trying to hurt me.
She wanted to destroy me in front of everyone.
And Mom didn't say a word. I couldn't move. Jessica's words hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear.
A burden.
She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, and Mom just sat there, sipping her wine like nothing had happened. My body was buzzing with shame and rage at the same time. I wanted to scream, to throw the glass across the room, to force Mom to defend me.
But she didn't.
Her silence was louder than Rachel's cruelty.
I pushed my chair back so hard it scraped the floor. My appetite was gone. My pride was gone.
The only thing I had left was the urge to get out of that house before I broke into pieces in front of them. As I walked toward the door, I heard Jessica's laugh again. That sharp, mocking laugh.
It followed me down the hall like a shadow I couldn't shake.
I grabbed my coat, my hands trembling, when a voice came from behind me.
Sarah.
Wait. I turned. It was Jake, my cousin. He'd stayed quiet all night, sitting at the far end of the table, barely making eye contact. But now he was standing, looking at me with something different in his eyes.
No pity. Not judgment. Something else. I didn't say anything.
I was too raw, too humiliated. Let's step outside, he said, lowering his voice so the others wouldn't hear. We slipped out onto the porch. The night was cold, the kind of cold that bites through your sweater and makes you shiver, but it felt better than being in that house. Out here, the air was sharp, honest.
No fake smiles.
No staged dinner tables. Just me, Jake, and the weight of everything I couldn't carry alone. Jake leaned against the railing, folding his arms.
For a moment, he just stared out into the dark yard.
Then he said, "You don't deserve what they are doing to you." My throat tightened. I blinked at him. Do you think that too?
Think it?
He turned to me, his eyes hard.
I know it. I've been watching this play out for years.
The favoritism. The way Aunt Linda always sides with Jessica no matter what.
It's not right. And tonight? That was too far. Something cracked inside me. A dam I didn't realize I'd been holding back.
I thought I was crazy, I whispered. Like maybe I was just being dramatic. But when she said that, when Mom didn't even blink, God, Jake, it felt like I didn't even belong to this family.
He shook his head. Don't you dare believe that.
You belong. That cabin, that was your dad's blood, sweat, and tears. He built it for you and Jessica both, not for it to become some trophy Jessica can cash out. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. I hated crying in front of people, and hated giving them proof I was breakable. But Jake wasn't people. Jake had always been the quiet observer, the one who noticed things others didn't. I can't stop them, I said, my voice cracking.
Mom already signed the papers.
Jessica's already making plans. What am I supposed to do?
Just accept it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. No. You fight. I laughed bitterly. Fight? With what? I don't have the money for lawyers. Jessica will spin this so I look like the bitter, jealous sister again.
Mom will back her up like she always does. I don't stand a chance. Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card.
He pressed it into my hand.
My buddy works in real estate law.
He owes me a favor. If you want, I'll set up a meeting.
No charge. I stared at the card, the black print blurring as my eyes filled with tears. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel.
Hope.
You'd do that for me?
I asked quietly. He nodded without hesitation. Of course I would. Sarah, you're not alone in this.
Even if the rest of them turn their backs, I've got yours.
Always.
The words hit me harder than Rachel's insult. Because at that moment, I realized I'd been walking through this storm convinced no one would ever stand beside me. And yet, here Jake was, steady and solid, offering me a lifeline. I slipped the card into my pocket like it was the most valuable thing I owned. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet, he said, his eyes narrowing. If we go down this road, things are going to get messy. Family secrets have a way of surfacing when money's involved.
You need to be ready for that. I frowned.
What do you mean, secrets?
He hesitated, like he'd said too much. Just, trust me. Keep your ears open.
You never know what you might learn if you stop listening to what they tell you and start paying attention to what they hide. I wanted to press him, but the porch light flicked on, and the sound of laughter spilled through the open window.
Mom and Jessica's laughter. Light, airy, like they were celebrating something I wasn't supposed to know. Jake sighed. Go home. Sleep.
Call me tomorrow, and we'll figure out the next step. I nodded, my chest heavy but a little less empty than it had been when I walked outside. I drove home in silence, the card burning in my pocket, my mind racing. For the first time since this nightmare started, I had someone in my corner.
Someone who believed me. Someone who wanted to fight. But the relief didn't last long.
Because when I went back inside to grab my purse before leaving, I stopped in the hallway. The dining room door was half closed, but not shut all the way. And from inside, I heard voices.
Jessica's. Mom's.
Low, urgent whispers. I froze, pressing myself against the wall, listening. She has no idea, Jessica was saying, her tone smug.
I told you, Mom whispered back. Sarah always was too naive. She'll never find out.
My heart slammed against my ribs.
Find out what? Jessica laughed quietly.
And if she does, what's she gonna do?
Dad never told her the truth about that cabin. And you know we can't let it come out now. The room spun. My breath caught in my throat.
Dad never told me the truth? I leaned closer, straining to hear, but the words blurred together as Mom hushed Jessica, warning her to keep her voice down.
A secret. A hidden truth tied to the cabin. Something they didn't want me to know.
I stumbled back, my mind reeling, my hands cold and clammy. Whatever they were hiding, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was something deeper.
Something dangerous.
And for the first time, I wasn't just fighting for the cabin.
I was fighting to uncover the truth. I didn't sleep that night.
Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their voices again, Jessica's smug whisper, Mom's warning tone. Dad never told her the truth about that cabin. The words looped in my head like a broken record. What is the truth? What were they hiding from me? By morning, I was pacing my living room with a cold cup of coffee in my hand, staring at nothing. My apartment felt too small, like the walls were closing in on me. My chest was tight, my palms clammy, and the longer I thought about it, the more I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't ignore it.
I had to dig.
I pulled out a box I hadn't touched in years. It was shoved into the back of my bedroom closet, buried under sweaters I never wore and shoes I should have thrown away. The box was old and dented, with my dad's handwriting scrawled across the top in black marker. Sarah, keep safe.
My hands shook as I pulled it out and set it on the floor.
Dust rose into the air, making me cough, but I didn't care. My heart raced as I lifted the lid.
Inside were pieces of him.
Faded photographs of us fishing by the lake.
Birthday cards where he'd written little notes in the corners.
A pocket knife I remembered him carrying everywhere. The smell hit me too, old paper, cedar wood, and a faint trace of his aftershave.
It felt like opening a door to the past. A door I didn't know I still needed.
But underneath the memories were envelopes. Thick manila folders stuffed with documents, receipts, letters.
My stomach twisted as I pulled the first one out and flipped it open. Property deeds. Tax forms.
Legal papers I barely understood. My dad's handwriting was in the margins, his careful notes scribbled in pencil. At first, it was nothing but numbers and signatures, but then I saw it. A line in one of the property documents from years ago. Inheritance clause. I froze. The word jumped off the page like it was written in red ink. I leaned closer, reading carefully. It said something about ownership being subject to a clause in the event of death, deferred until conditions were met.
My head spun.
It was legal jargon I didn't fully grasp, but one thing was clear. The cabin wasn't as straightforward as Mom and Rachel made it seem.
My pulse quickened.
I grabbed another folder, flipping through page after page. Receipts for lumber.
Notes about construction timelines. But then, tucked in the back, I found a letter.
The envelope was yellowed with age, addressed to my dad in handwriting I didn't recognize.
The date made my throat tighten. It was from the year I turned 15.
I unfolded it carefully, and my eyes scanned the lines. It was from a lawyer. The letter confirmed my dad had set up a will with very specific terms regarding the cabin. Something about primary beneficiary and secondary beneficiary.
My name was mentioned.
Not Jessica's. My heart slammed in my chest. I kept digging, desperate now. Paper after paper, letter after letter. It felt like trying to put together a puzzle with missing pieces, but the picture was slowly forming.
And it was nothing like the story Mom and Jessica had fed me. I was supposed to have the cabin. Me.
Not Jessica. I whispered the words out loud just to hear them, my voice shaky. It was meant for me.
But it wasn't enough.
I needed proof. I needed something undeniable, something they couldn't twist.
Hours passed.
The sun shifted through the blinds, drawing lines across the floor as I tore through the last of the folders. And then, at the very bottom of the box, I found a small, sealed envelope.
It was heavier than the others.
My name was written on the front in my dad's neat, blocky letters.
Sarah. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers trembled as I slid it open. Inside was a folded document. Thick paper. Legal formatting. A will.
I spread it out on the floor, my eyes scanning every line, my heart hammering louder with each word.
And then I saw it. Clear as day.
The cabin was left to me.
Solely to me. My dad had written it in black and white. Jessica's name wasn't anywhere. For a second, I couldn't breathe.
My chest burned, my vision blurred, and my hands gripped the paper so tightly it nearly tore.
They had lied.
Mom and Jessica had lied to my face. They had stolen from me, stolen the one thing my dad had wanted me to have, the one piece of him I thought I had left. I sank back onto my heels, clutching the will against my chest, the truth crushing me and setting me on fire all at once. I had the proof.
I had the weapon.
And for the first time, I realized this fight wasn't over.
It was just beginning.
The will shook in my hands long after I found it. I must have read it 100 times, each word searing itself into my brain.
It was real. It was signed. It was notarized.
My dad's handwriting was there, his signature steady and strong like he'd wanted to make damn sure no one could twist his words.
The cabin was mine. Not Jessica's.
Not Mom's.
Mine.
I barely slept that night, lying awake with the will spread out beside me on the bed, as if letting it out of my sight for even a second would make it disappear. My mind kept racing, flickering between memories of my dad's smile, Jessica's smirk, and Mom's cold silence.
I couldn't tell which haunted me more. By morning, I knew I couldn't carry this alone.
The weight of it was too heavy, too dangerous. I needed someone I could trust.
And there was only one person who had stood by me since this nightmare began. Jake. I called him, my voice shaky. Can you come over?
It's important. He didn't ask questions, just said, I'll be there in 20. When I opened the door, he was standing there in his usual flannel jacket, his eyes scanning my face. You look like you haven't slept.
I didn't, I admitted. Come in.
There's something you need to see. I led him to the kitchen table where I'd laid out the will, smoothed flat like a sacred text. He leaned over, his brows knitting as he read. I watched his expression closely, every flicker in his eyes, every twitch of his mouth.
Finally, he let out a low whistle. Holy shit.
This changes everything.
My chest tightened.
So I'm not crazy.
This is real.
He meant it for me. Jake nodded slowly, his fingers tapping the paper.
This is strong, Sarah.
Really strong.
Rachel and Linda are going to have a hard time fighting this.
Hell, with the right lawyer, they might not have a case at all.
A lump formed in my throat. I can't believe they've been lying to me. They must have known, Jake. They had to.
Otherwise, why whisper about it like it was some big secret? He sighed, running a hand through his hair.
Yeah, they knew. Trust me, your mom doesn't make moves unless she's sure she can control the outcome.
She probably figured you'd never dig deep enough to find this.
I sank into the chair, pressing my palms to my eyes. It makes me sick. My own mother. My own sister.
Stealing what Dad left for me. Jake's voice softened.
Hey, you've got proof now. That's what matters. You can fight back.
I lowered my hands, staring at him.
But how? I can't just wave this around and expect them to back off.
They'll deny it. They'll twist it. They'll find some way to paint me as the greedy one. He leaned closer, his voice steady, reassuring. That's where I come in. I'll talk to my buddy, the real estate lawyer I told you about. We'll get this verified, filed properly. If Jessica tries to sell the cabin, we'll have grounds to stop her. You're not alone in this. His words settled into me like a blanket, warm and solid. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe.
I let myself believe.
Thank you, I whispered.
He gave a small smile. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. Family fights always do. But I've got your back.
We sat there for hours, going over the details, planning the steps. He kept telling me it was going to be okay, that we just needed to move carefully, that patience would be key. And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. When he finally left, I hugged him tightly at the door. You're the only one I can trust, I said.
He patted my shoulder.
Always.
But what I didn't see then, what I couldn't see, was the flicker in his eyes as he walked away. Something guarded. Something hidden.
That night, I clutched the will like a lifeline, whispering to myself, Dad wanted me to have it.
Dad wanted me to have it.
Over and over, until the words lulled me to sleep. The next day, I woke up to a text from Jessica.
Just one line. Nice try, Sarah. But you'll never win. My blood ran cold. She knew. She knew about the will.
I stared at the phone, my hands trembling, my mind spinning.
I hadn't told anyone but Jake. No one else had seen it.
No one else even knew I'd been digging through Dad's papers.
And then it hit me like a punch to the gut. Jake. The cousin I trusted. The one person I let in. He told her.
Betrayal burned through me, hot and raw, worse than anything Jessica or Mom had done. Because at least with them, I expected it. But Jake?
Jake had sworn he was on my side. He had looked me in the eye and promised. And now he'd stabbed me in the back.
I dropped the phone, my whole body shaking, rage and heartbreak colliding inside me. If I couldn't trust Jake, who the hell could I trust? The walls around me felt like they were closing in, the room spinning as the truth settled in.
I wasn't just fighting my mother. I wasn't just fighting my sister. I was fighting my own blood.
And this betrayal cut deeper than all the rest.
I didn't want to believe it at first.
My brain kept searching for another explanation, some loophole where Jake hadn't betrayed me, where Jessica had somehow just guessed or stumbled onto the truth.
But deep down, I knew better. The text Jessica sent was too precise.
She knew about the will, about the exact thing I'd shown Jake with trembling hands at the kitchen table.
And the only way she could have known was through him.
I sat there for hours, frozen in the chair, staring at my phone like it was a loaded weapon. The silence in the house felt heavy, pressing in on me, reminding me of just how alone I was. My chest ached in a way I couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't just anger at Jake. It was grief. Grief for the trust one had put in him. Grief for the hope that maybe, just maybe, I had one ally left in this mess. But now, that hope is gone. By evening, I couldn't sit with it anymore. The betrayal gnawed at me, growing louder with each tick of the clock. Finally, I grabbed my keys and drove to Jake's place, the will still tucked into my bag like some fragile relic I couldn't risk leaving behind. When he opened the door, he looked surprised but not guilty. That was the first thing that hit me. He wasn't fidgeting,
and wasn't avoiding my eyes.
He stood there calm, like he'd been expecting me all along.
"Sarah," he said, his voice neutral.
"You look rough."
I shoved past him, my blood boiling.
"Don't you dare." He closed the door slowly, turning to face me. "What's going on?" I pulled my phone from my pocket, thrusting Jessica's text toward him.
"This. She knows, Jake. She knows about the will.
And I told no one else.
So don't you dare stand there and play dumb with me."
For a long moment, he just stared at me, his jaw tight. Then he let out a breath, leaning back against the counter.
"All right.
You want the truth?"
Fine."
Jessica offered me money.
More than I've ever seen in my life. And I took it. The words landed like knives. I actually staggered, my knees weak.
"You, what?" His eyes were cold now, detached, like I was nothing more than a problem he was explaining away.
"You don't get it, Sarah. She's going to win."
"Your mom, Rachel, they've got the resources, the lawyers, the connections. You've got, what?"
"Some dusty will and a broken heart."
"You think that's enough to go against them?"
"It's not."
I figured if I couldn't beat them, I might as well take the deal. I shook my head, trying to make sense of his words, but nothing fit.
"I trusted you. I let you in.
I believed every word you said."
"That was your mistake," he cut in, his voice sharp now.
"You keep looking at people like they are who you wish they were instead of who they really are."
"Jessica plays dirty."
"Your mom plays dirty."
"And me? I just want to survive. You should try it sometime."
Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of him.
I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms.
"Survive?"
"By selling me out. By selling out my dad's memory."
His face flickered for just a second, some trace of guilt crossing his features. But it vanished as quickly as it came.
"Your dad's gone, Sarah. He's not here to save you. And neither am I." That was it.
The final nail in the coffin of whatever friendship or family tie we once had. I turned on my heel, storming out of his house before the rage and heartbreak could consume me completely. I drove aimlessly for a while, the night swallowing me whole. The streetlights blurred through the windshield as tears finally spilled down my face. My hands shook on the steering wheel, my breath ragged. I felt crushed. Not just by Jake, but by everything. Rachel's cruelty, Mum's silence, Dad's absence, it all piled onto me until I couldn't tell where one betrayal ended and the next began. I was drowning, gasping for air in a storm I hadn't asked for. When I finally pulled over, I just sat there in the dark, staring at nothing, listening to the thundering of my own heartbeat. I kept thinking about Dad, about what he would say if he could see this. Would he tell me to fight harder? Or would he just be disappointed that I hadn't seen through Jake sooner? I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Instead, I whispered into the emptiness, "I can't do this alone." But I was alone. More isolated than I had ever been. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed and made coffee, though it tasted like ash in my mouth. I tried to distract myself, to focus on anything but the gnawing ache in my chest. But when the phone rang, my stomach dropped. It was a call I couldn't ignore. It was from a friend of Dad's, an old neighbor who had always kept tabs on things in town. His voice was urgent, low. "Sarah, I don't know if you've heard yet, but Jessica filed papers at the courthouse. She's moving to sell the cabin." The mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. "What? That's impossible. She can't, she doesn't have the will." There was a pause, heavy and sharp. Then he said, "She has documents. Signed ones. They are saying your dad left the cabin to her." My blood froze. My mind went blank. No, that's not possible. I have the will. The real one. It's in my hands right now. "I don't know what to tell you, Sarah," he said gently. "But I've seen the papers myself. And unless you can prove otherwise fast, Jessica's already got a buyer lined up." The world tilted around me, my breath catching in my chest. Forged documents. She had forged my father's signature. She had taken everything, twisted it, and now she was using it to erase me completely. I dropped to my knees among the shards of broken ceramic, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Jessica wasn't just trying to steal from me anymore.
She was rewriting history. I didn't move from the floor for hours.
The broken mug, the coffee stains, the jagged pieces of ceramic around me, they all blurred into one ugly picture of my life.
Shattered. Messy.
Unfixable. I sat there hugging my knees, the wool pressed against my chest like it was the last piece of oxygen in a room filled with smoke. The phone call kept replaying in my head, each word sharper than the last. Jessica filed papers.
She had forged documents.
She already had a buyer. The truth hit me like a truck over and over again until my stomach felt sick. My father's cabin, his dream, the one place where I thought I could still feel him, was slipping through my fingers. I tried to breathe, but every breath caught in my throat. For the first time since this all began, I thought maybe Jessica was right.
Maybe Mom was right.
Maybe I was just a burden. Maybe the fight wasn't worth it. I whispered it to myself, my voice shaking. Maybe I should just let it go. The words sounded foreign, but once they were out, they circled me like vultures. Let it go.
Give up. Walk away.
Save yourself the pain. The idea sat heavy on me, tempting. If I stopped now, if I let Rachel and Mom win, the constant war inside me would end. No more betrayal, no more late nights digging through Dad's papers, no more crying until I couldn't breathe. Just nothing. But the silence that I thought was left behind was worse than the noise. Because it wasn't just about the cabin anymore.
It was about everything.
Years of being overlooked, years of swallowing my pain while Jessica shined like some perfect golden child, years of Mom turning her head instead of standing up for me. Letting go wasn't freedom.
It was surrender.
And I wasn't sure I could live with myself if I surrendered.
My eyes drifted to the window.
Outside, the sun had set, leaving only the dark outline of the trees swaying in the night wind. I remembered being a kid, sitting on the porch of that very cabin with Dad. The crickets singing, the smell of pine in the air, his voice low and steady beside me. "Sarah," he'd said once, as the stars came out, "people will try to break you.
Sometimes even the ones closest to you. But you can't let them.
If you let them break you, you'll lose more than whatever they are trying to take. You'll lose yourself." The memory hit me like a punch. I could still see his face, the tired lines around his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was stronger than I believed.
I closed my eyes and clung to that moment. He believed in me.
Even when I was small, even when I felt invisible, he saw me. And now, with him gone, the only way to honor that was to refuse to let them destroy me. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and endless, but this time they weren't only from pain.
They were from something else. Something harder. Something sharper. Rage.
It built slowly, then fast, like a fire eating through dry wood.
My chest burned with it, my veins throbbed with it. Rachel hadn't just stolen money. She had stolen my father's legacy. She had spat on everything he stood for.
And Mom, she stood by her, watching me bleed, calling me selfish for wanting the one thing that was mine. Jake betrayed me for money.
Jessica humiliated me for sport. Mom tore me down just to make Jessica taller. And me? I stayed quiet. I had swallowed it all. Until now.
I stood up, my body trembling, but not from weakness anymore.
From the surge of something I hadn't felt in a long time, power.
The floor was a mess, shards glittering like little daggers, coffee pooling at my feet.
I looked down at the wreckage and saw myself in it. Broken, yes. But not destroyed. Not yet.
I walked to the sink, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. My eyes were swollen, my hair a tangled mess, my lips pale. But behind all that, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. A fighter. I leaned closer to the glass, my voice low, raw, but steady. "They took everything from me." The words echoed in the small room, bouncing back at me like a challenge. I said them again, louder this time. "They took everything from me." My chest rose and fell, faster now, adrenaline pumping through me. I gripped the edge of the sink so tightly my knuckles turned white. And then I said the words that changed everything. The vow that would define what came next. "Now it's my turn." The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was sharp, electric, like the air right before a storm. I didn't just want to fight back, I wanted revenge. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. The morning after I made my vow, I woke up with a pounding head and red eyes, but I wasn't broken anymore. I was sharp, awake, running on a kind of fuel I hadn't felt in years. I lay there staring at the ceiling, and one thought repeated in my head like a drumbeat. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. The first step was proof. Words meant nothing in my family. Jessica would twist them, Mom would gaslight me, Jake would lie through his teeth. The only way to win was to have evidence, cold, undeniable evidence that tied everything together.
I started with the boxes from Dad's study.
I had already gone through them once, but this time, I looked with a different eye. I combed through old letters, mortgage statements, and handwritten notes. I found a receipt for repairs on the cabin that Dad had signed just a few months before his death, with a note scrawled at the bottom, for Sarah, her future, her peace. My throat tightened, but I forced myself not to break. I took pictures, labeling each one, backing them up on a hard drive and in a hidden folder on my phone. Then I dug deeper. Buried between property tax forms and insurance policies, I found an envelope addressed to my father's lawyer.
It hadn't been sent.
The draft was in his shaky handwriting, and though unfinished, it clearly mentioned his intention to ensure the cabin remains solely in Sarah's name. I felt a rush of vindication, my heart pounding like I'd struck gold. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was a trail.
I didn't stop there.
At night, when the house was quiet, I turned my phone into a recorder. I left it in the kitchen when Mom and Jessica thought I wasn't around. Their voices carried through the walls, sharp, cutting, smug.
Sarah's so naive, Jessica laughed one evening.
She'll never be able to stop this.
Don't underestimate her completely, Mom replied.
But if she thinks she can outsmart us, she's even dumber than I thought.
That was enough for me.
I saved the recording, listening to it again and again until the words burned into my brain. Every insult, every sneer, they weren't just pain anymore.
They were ammunition.
Piece by piece, I was building a case.
But I knew I couldn't fight this war alone.
I needed someone who understood the system, someone who knew how to take the scraps I had collected and turn them into something that could actually hold up in court. Finding a lawyer felt dangerous, like stepping onto a tightrope where one wrong move would send me crashing down. If Jessica caught even a whiff of what I was doing, she would find a way to crush me before I got started. I searched quietly, careful not to use my personal laptop or phone. Instead, I borrowed a computer at the library, sitting in the back corner with my hood pulled low as I scrolled through profiles. Most of the names blurred together, expensive firms that I couldn't dream of affording, polished headshots that looked more like models than lawyers. But then I found him, Daniel Reed. His bio wasn't flashy, but it said one thing that made me stop. He specialized in inheritance disputes, especially cases involving forged documents and contested wills. I sent a single email, short and cautious, using a throwaway account. I didn't give names, just the situation. To my surprise, he replied within hours, "You have a case.
Come in."
No charge for the first consultation.
My hands trembled as I read it. Part of me wanted to believe it was too good to be true.
Another part felt like, for once, maybe the universe was on my side. The next day, I drove across town to his office. It wasn't in some glass high-rise but in an old brick building, tucked between a laundromat and a diner.
I liked that. It felt real.
Inside, the waiting room was small, plain, with outdated magazines stacked neatly on a wooden table. When he finally called my name, I followed him into a modest office lined with bookshelves and case files. He was in his 40s, glasses perched on his nose, his suit a little wrinkled. But his handshake was firm, his eyes steady.
"Tell me everything," he said. And I did.
My voice shook at first, but the more I spoke, the stronger I got. I showed him the letters, the receipts, and the recordings. I explained about the forged documents Jessica had filed, about Mom's manipulation, about how Dad had intended the cabin for me. He leaned back in his chair when I finished, steepling his fingers. "You have more than enough here to challenge them," he said.
"But it won't be easy. They'll fight dirty. Are you ready for that?"
My heart raced, but I nodded. "I don't care how dirty it gets.
I just want justice."
He smiled faintly, almost like he admired me for it. "Then let's get to work." For the first time in weeks, I walked out of a room feeling lighter.
I had someone in my corner now.
Someone who didn't think I was crazy, who didn't dismiss me, who saw the truth.
It was a fragile kind of hope, but it was enough to keep me going. I should have known it wouldn't last.
2 nights later, I came home from a late shift at the hospital. My apartment was dark, quiet, but something felt off the second I stepped inside. The air was heavy, suffocating, like the walls themselves were holding their breath.
I dropped my bag on the couch, flipped on the light and froze.
Jessica was sitting at my kitchen table, her legs crossed, her phone in her hand. She looked perfectly at ease, like she owned the place. "Jessica."
My voice came out hoarse.
She smiled, slow and smug. "So it's true. You hired a lawyer."
My stomach flipped. How do you know about that? She didn't answer right away.
She just tapped her phone, then looked up with eyes that gleamed like sharpened glass.
You really think you can beat me? You? Sarah, you're pathetic. Always have been.
And now you've made a huge mistake.
I swallowed hard. This isn't about you. This is about what Dad wanted.
About what's fair.
Fair.
She laughed, sharp and cold. Life isn't fair. Haven't you figured that out yet? I clenched my fists, but before I could answer, her smile widened.
You should have stayed quiet.
Because now, I'm going to make sure you regret this in ways you can't even imagine. I stared at her, my pulse pounding, my skin cold.
What are you talking about?
She leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was savoring every word.
I'll ruin you. I know things, Sarah. About your job. About your nursing license.
Do you think the hospital would keep someone like you if the right people started hearing the wrong stories?
My breath caught in my throat.
Jessica's smirk grew darker, almost gleeful. One phone call, and your career is over.
No cabin.
No inheritance.
No job. Nothing.
Do you really want to test me? Her words hung in the air like poison, seeping into my skin, burning through every ounce of hope I had just started to rebuild.
And in that moment, I realized she wasn't bluffing.
When Rachel threatened to ruin my career, I thought she was bluffing.
I thought even she wouldn't cross that line. But I underestimated her. I underestimated just how far she was willing to go to destroy me.
2 days later, I walked into the hospital for my shift like any other. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the smell of antiseptic hit my nose, and for a moment, the familiar rhythm of work steadied me.
Here, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I wasn't the sister fighting for scraps.
I was Nurse Sarah Miller, good at her job, respected, needed.
Or at least, I had been. It started small. Whispers.
Nurses who usually greeted me with smiles avoided my eyes.
2 orderlies who always joked with me fell silent as I passed.
The atmosphere felt charged, different, like static before a storm. By lunchtime, I knew something was wrong. I walked into the break room, and the chatter stopped instantly. A younger nurse, Megan, quickly closed her phone, her face flushing. I set down my lunch, trying to ignore it, but my hands shook. "What's going on?" I asked finally, forcing a smile. Megan hesitated, then mumbled, "Maybe you should talk to HR."
My stomach dropped. Why?
What happened?
She wouldn't meet my eyes.
The silence in the room was suffocating. An hour later, my supervisor, Helen, pulled me aside. Her face was tight, her voice clipped. "Sarah, we need to speak in my office." My heart thudded as I followed her down the hall. Inside, she closed the door and folded her arms. "I've had several complaints come in about you." "Complaints?"
My voice cracked.
"About what?"
Helen slid a file across the desk. "Neglect. Rudeness."
"A patient claimed you mishandled their medication." The words felt unreal, like they were floating in the air instead of being spoken to me.
"That's impossible. I've never."
"Sarah," Helen cut in, her eyes hard. "I've always valued your work here. But the hospital takes these allegations seriously. You're suspended pending investigation." The ground tilted beneath me. "Suspended?"
You can't be serious. You know me. You know I would never. But she shook her head.
"I don't have a choice."
Her words blurred. My ears rang.
I stumbled out of her office,
my legs trembling.
As I walked through the hall, the stares burned into me.
Colleagues I'd worked beside for years now looked at me like a stranger.
Some even smirked, like they'd been waiting for me to fall. And in that moment, I knew. Jessica had done it.
She had actually done it.
I sat in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Rage boiled inside me, mixing with panic. My job was everything, my livelihood, my identity, my proof that I wasn't the useless failure my family painted me to be.
And now, Jessica had ripped it out from under me like it was nothing. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep.
I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the day.
Every whisper. Every sideways glance.
Every fake allegation. The next morning, I woke to dozens of missed calls and texts.
Some were from coworkers asking what happened.
Others were crueler anonymous numbers, taunting messages. Guess you're not as perfect as you thought. Heard you almost killed someone.
Jessica's fingerprints were all over it. By the end of the week, I was drowning.
Bills piled up on my kitchen table. My lawyer had called, warning me that if I lost my job, it would weaken my case in court. They'll say you're unstable, irresponsible, he said. We need to fight this on every front.
I nodded numbly, but inside, I was breaking.
My father's words, never let them break you, echoed in my head, but the cracks were widening. On the 7th day of my suspension, I hit my lowest point. I was sitting on my couch in the dark, surrounded by unopened mail, my stomach growling from skipping meals. The TV was on, but I wasn't watching.
My phone buzzed with another cruel text, and I threw it across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor.
I buried my face in my hands and sobbed.
Big, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I thought about quitting.
About walking away from everything, the cabin, the fight, the career.
Maybe Jessica was right.
Maybe I was pathetic.
Maybe I'd never win.
But just as quickly as that thought came,
something inside me snapped. No. I couldn't let her win. Not again. Not this time.
I wiped my face and picked up my phone, ready to call Daniel, my lawyer, to ask what else we could do.
That's when I saw it.
A new message.
From an unknown number.
I almost ignored it, assuming it was another cruel text.
But something about it made me pause.
The words were short, precise.
I know what Jessica did.
I have proof. Meet me tomorrow, 9 p.m. Don't tell anyone.
My breath caught.
My thumb hovered over the screen.
Was this a trap? Another game? Or was it real? My pulse raced as I read the message again and again. Proof. Someone out there had dirt on Jessica.
Someone who could finally tip the scales in my favor. I sat frozen, the glow of the phone lighting up my trembling hands. For the first time since the suspension, a spark of hope flickered in the darkness.
But it was laced with terror.
Because whoever sent that message knew the truth. And if they knew, then Jessica's secrets were bigger than I ever imagined. I barely slept that night after the message came through. I kept turning over questions in my head.
Who was this person? What did they know? Why would they want to help me?
Every scenario ran through my mind, from some anonymous do-gooder to Jessica herself setting up a trap. By 9 the next night, I was parked in the lot of a half-abandoned strip mall on the edge of town, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might bruise my ribs. The place looked like it belonged in a crime show, broken neon signs, boarded-up shops, a single flickering streetlight. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and asked myself one last time if I was being reckless. But then I remembered Jessica's smirk when she said she'd ruin me, the way she stripped away my career like it was nothing, and I knew I had no choice. If this was real, if there was proof, I needed it.
A figure emerged from the shadows by the liquor store.
He was tall, in a dark hoodie, moving with a kind of restless energy. For a second, I couldn't place him, but as he pulled the hood back, recognition slammed into me.
Tyler, Jessica's ex.
I hadn't seen him in years, but I remembered the way she used to brag about him. How she dumped him in the cruelest way possible, mocking him in front of her friends, laughing about how pathetic he was. She'd always told me he was obsessed with her, that he couldn't move on. And yet, here he was, standing in front of me, the man she had humiliated, apparently reaching out to me of all people.
Sarah, he said, his voice low, cautious.
Thanks for coming. I stepped out of my car, my body tense. Why me? Why now?
He smirked bitterly. Because I hate her as much as you do.
And I finally have something that can burn her to the ground. I studied him carefully, trying to gauge if this was some twisted game. But there was no mistaking the bitterness in his voice, the raw anger. What is it?
I asked, my throat dry. He pulled out a manila envelope from under his jacket and handed it to me.
My fingers trembled as I opened it, pulling out stacks of papers. At first glance, it looked like bank statements, contracts, tax returns.
What am I looking at?
Proof, Tyler said. Jessica's been laundering money.
Fraud. Tax evasion.
She forged signatures, opened accounts under other people's names, and used shell companies to hide it.
She's been doing it for years.
I was with her long enough to see the patterns. I started collecting documents the moment I realized she was using me as her cover. My heart hammered as I flipped through the pages. Every line, every number, every falsified signature screamed corruption. Jessica wasn't just greedy, she was a criminal.
This could destroy her, I whispered. Tyler's jaw clenched.
Good.
She deserves it.
After everything she did to me, to you, to anyone who gets in her way, she thinks she's untouchable.
She's not. And I want to watch her fall.
For a moment, the world seemed to spin.
I thought about the cabin, about my father, about everything Jessica had stolen.
And now, in my hands, I was holding the key not only to getting it all back but to ending Jessica's entire empire of lies.
But doubt crept in. Why give this to me?
You could have gone to the police yourself.
Tyler's eyes darkened.
I don't trust the system. Jessica has money, influence, and lawyers.
She'd find a way to spin it. But you're already in a legal battle with her.
You've got a lawyer.
You've got a motive. You're her sister.
If anyone can use this, it's you. I stared at him, the envelope heavy in my hands.
It almost felt too good to be true. Proof Jessica had committed fraud. Proof she'd evaded taxes. Proof she wasn't just cruel but criminal. But another thought chilled me.
If Jessica ever found out Tyler had betrayed her, he'd be ruined.
Maybe worse.
She can't know this came from you, I said firmly.
He smirked. She won't.
By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. We stood there in silence for a beat, the night air biting cold, the streetlight flickering overhead. Then Tyler leaned closer.
One more thing. Don't underestimate her. She's dangerous when cornered.
If you use this, she'll come for you harder than ever.
I already know that, I whispered. But inside, something had shifted.
For weeks, I'd felt powerless, trapped in her shadow. Now, for the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. After Tyler left, I sat in my car staring at the papers, my chest tight with adrenaline.
My mind raced through the possibilities. I could hand this to Daniel.
We could build a case not just for the cabin, but to expose Jessica entirely. I drove home, every nerve alive, every light in the street seeming sharper, brighter. I spread the papers out across my kitchen table, scanning line after line. The deeper I read, the more shocked I became. Jessica wasn't just dabbling in shady dealings, she was running a full-scale operation. Fake invoices, offshore accounts, even using Linda's name on certain documents without her knowledge. It was a web of lies so tangled, it was a miracle she hadn't been caught already.
I thought about the people who had trusted her.
The people she had lied to, stolen from, manipulated. And suddenly, it hit me, I could do more than just reclaim my father's cabin. I could destroy Jessica.
Not just in court. Not just in my family. Publicly. Completely.
The realization made my breath catch in my throat. My pulse raced, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration flooding me. Because this wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about revenge. This was about finally turning the tables. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the mountain of evidence, the words slipping out of my mouth before I could stop them.
This isn't just about the cabin anymore, I whispered to myself. This is about ending her.
And with that thought, a fire lit inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Because for the first time, Jessica wasn't the one with all the power. I was. The papers from Tyler stayed hidden in a locked drawer in my bedroom, but they were never far from my mind. Every morning when I got dressed for work, every night when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I thought about them.
I thought about what they meant.
The cabin, my father's legacy, wasn't just mine by right, it was mine legally.
And Rachel wasn't just a selfish sister.
She was a criminal hiding behind fake smiles and forged documents.
I wanted to storm into her life with it all at once.
To slam the evidence down in front of her, to watch her face drain of color, to hear her stutter for the first time in her life.
But I knew better.
Jessica thrived on chaos, on getting people emotional so she could manipulate them. If I rushed, if I came at her with fire and rage, she'd spin it.
She always did.
So, I forced myself into patience.
I went quiet.
I made small talk with Linda when she called, even though my skin crawled at the sound of her voice. I answered Jessica's texts with short, polite replies, never showing the storm inside me. On the outside, I was calm, compliant. On the inside, I was sharpening my knife. It was during one of those quiet days that the invitation arrived. A glossy white envelope slid into my mailbox, my name written in Jessica's handwriting.
I knew before I even opened it that it wasn't good. My stomach twisted as I tore it open.
You are invited to celebrate Jessica Carter and James Whitman's engagement.
I laughed bitterly. Of course.
Jessica wasn't just stealing my father's cabin, she was parading her happiness in front of me, making sure I knew she was winning. An engagement party was exactly her style, loud, flashy, staged like a performance.
For a moment, I thought about ripping it up, ignoring it,
staying home and protecting what little peace I had left.
But then I realized this was perfect. An engagement party meant a crowd, an audience.
People Jessica wanted to impress. And if she mocked me, if she tried to humiliate me the way I knew she would, it would be in front of all of them.
Which meant my revenge would land harder than ever. I sent her a text back that night.
Congratulations.
I'll be there. Her reply came almost instantly. Knew you'd come around.
Maybe this will help us all move on. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight.
She really thought she had me fooled. Good.
That's exactly what I wanted. The week leading up to the party felt endless. I worked my shifts at the hospital, keeping my head down while the gossip from Jessica's lies still clung to me. Some of my co-workers avoided eye contact.
Some whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. I kept my mouth shut. I had bigger battles to fight. At night, I rehearsed.
Not in front of a mirror, not like a speech, but in my mind.
I thought about the exact moment to strike.
The words I would use.
The tone of my voice.
The silence I would let hang after I revealed the truth. I didn't just want Jessica exposed, I wanted her destroyed. The day of the engagement party, I drove to the Whitman estate, James's family's sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Portland. The driveway was lined with luxury cars, the windows glowing warm with laughter and light. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but not from fear.
From anticipation.
I parked, smoothed down my simple navy dress, and walked toward the house. I could already hear the music drifting out, the clink of glasses, the rise and fall of voices. Inside, the place looked like something out of a movie: crystal chandeliers, white roses on every table, waiters carrying trays of champagne. And in the center of it all was Jessica.
She looked like a queen.
Her hair perfectly curled, her dress shimmering silver under the lights. She glowed with the kind of beauty money bought, her arm hooked possessively through James's. When she spotted me across the room, her lips curled into a smile that wasn't friendly, it was victorious. "Sarah," she called, her voice carrying over the crowd. "You made it."
Heads turned. Dozens of eyes landed on me at once.
I forced a smile, pretending not to notice the undercurrent of tension.
Of course I did.
I wouldn't miss it.
Jessica beamed, kissing my cheek, her perfume sharp and suffocating.
"See, everyone? My sister and I are finally putting things behind us. Tonight is about family."
Family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. The night went on in a blur of small talk and fake smiles.
Linda was there, clinging to Jessica like a lifeline, gushing about her perfect daughter. Guests flitted around, congratulating the happy couple, talking about wedding dates and honeymoons. I stayed quiet, sipping my champagne, keeping my mask firmly in place.
But I could feel it coming.
I knew Jessica too well.
She couldn't resist.
It happened when the band quieted and Jessica clinked her glass for attention. The room hushed, everyone turning toward her. She stood tall, her silver dress shimmering, James's hand resting on the small of her back. "I just want to thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice smooth, confident. "This is the happiest moment of my life, and I'm so grateful to share it with the people I love most."
The crowd clapped, some cheering.
Jessica waited for the noise to die down, her eyes sweeping the room, until they landed on me. "And of course," she continued, "I have to thank my sister, Sarah.
She's been through a lot."
Her smile sharpened, her words dripping with fake sympathy. "She's had some struggles, some mistakes, but she's still here supporting me. That takes courage."
The room shifted.
People glanced at me, pitying, judgmental. My chest burned. Jessica wasn't finished. "Not everyone would show up to celebrate their sister after being such a burden on the family," she said, her voice sweet, cruel.
"But Sarah did."
"And that says a lot."
Gasps rippled through the crowd. My blood roared in my ears.
Jessica smiled wider, basking in the spotlight, certain she'd won again. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this was exactly what I'd been waiting for. I set my glass down slowly, my hands steady now. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't broken. I was ready. And as the room's attention hung heavy between us, as Jessica's words cut through me like knives, I knew this was my stage.
This was the perfect moment. The moment I would finally strike.
The room was still echoing with Jessica's words, her smug little smile burning itself into my memory. I could feel every set of eyes on me, some full of pity, others with quiet judgment, and a few, those who knew Jessica too well, watching with curiosity. The champagne in my stomach churned, but I forced my lips into a faint smile, pretending her cruelty hadn't just sliced through me. Jessica lifted her glass higher, basking in the attention like a queen on her throne. "To family," she said, her voice sweet but poisonous. The crowd obediently raised their glasses, repeating the toast. "To my family." I raised mine too, keeping my face blank. My hand didn't even shake. Inside, though, I was coiled tight, like a bowstring pulled to the edge.
She thought she had humiliated me again. She thought she'd won. That was her mistake. As laughter and chatter resumed, I slipped into the background. I walked near the buffet table, nodded politely at a couple of James's relatives, and sipped the last of my champagne. To anyone watching, I was just the awkward older sister trying to blend in. To Jessica, I was the same Sarah she had been mocking for years, the one too weak to fight back. Good. Let her think that.
Let her keep digging her own grave with her arrogance. The night carried on with toasts and clinking glasses. Linda hovered around Rachel like a bodyguard, gushing at every word she said, laughing too loud at every joke. James stood beside her with that rehearsed smile, clearly used to playing the part of the perfect fiancé.
He had no idea the storm that was about to crash down on them.
I watched them all from the edges of the room, keeping my distance but never taking my eyes off Rachel. She was glowing with arrogance, her silver dress catching the chandelier light like she was born for it. She worked the crowd effortlessly, bragging about her wedding plans, flaunting her ring, even making digs at my lonely single life whenever she thought she could get away with it. Each jab landed like a spark in dry grass, fueling the fire inside me.
But I stayed quiet, patient, calm.
When she called me over to introduce me to one of James's wealthy aunts, she wrapped her arm around my shoulders and cooed, "This is my sister, Sarah.
She's a nurse.
Not as glamorous as law or finance, but she's doing her best." Her voice dripped with fake kindness, but her eyes glittered with cruelty. I smiled tightly, shook the woman's hand, and let Jessica bask in her own smugness. She didn't realize every word, every smirk, every insult was making what I was about to do that much sweeter. Time stretched, the music swelling and fading, the laughter and conversation buzzing like static in my ears. I kept glancing at the microphone on the small stage near the band. It sat there waiting, harmless to everyone else, but to me, it was a weapon. The opportunity came when James's father clinked his glass and gave a short, booming toast about love, commitment, and the importance of marrying into strong families. Jessica's eyes sparkled as she soaked in the applause. She stepped up to the microphone, thanking everyone again, her voice syrupy, her smile flawless. She was in her element, on her stage.
And I knew it was almost time.
I could feel my heart pounding, not from fear but from anticipation.
My hands were steady. My breathing was calm.
I wasn't that broken girl anymore, standing small in Jessica's shadow. I was about to take her down, piece by piece, in front of everyone she cared about impressing. She turned from the mic, slipping back into James's side, her hand clutching his arm. People cheered, glasses clinked, the room was alive with her victory.
That was when I moved.
I walked toward the stage slowly, deliberately, each step echoing in my chest. A few heads turned, watching me curiously.
I didn't rush.
I didn't look nervous.
I looked like someone with something important to say.
By the time I reached the microphone, the room was already quieting.
Conversations died mid-sentence.
The band shifted uncertainly. Even Jessica's smile faltered for half a second, confusion flickering across her face. I wrapped my fingers around the microphone, feeling the cool metal steady me. The silence grew heavy, thick, all those eyes landing on me. My pulse thudded, but my voice, when it came out, was clear. I have something everyone here should know.
The room froze.
Jessica's smile stiffened, her grip tightening on James's arm. Linda's face was drained of color. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, whispers rising like smoke. And I stood there, calm, unflinching, knowing that nothing would ever be the same after this moment. The microphone in my hand felt heavier than I expected. It was like all the years of silence, all the humiliation and betrayal, had been poured into this single moment, weighing me down but also steadying me.
The room was frozen in anticipation.
I could see every face turn toward me, a mix of curiosity, confusion, and impatience. The hum of the band had cut off, the servers froze mid-step with trays of champagne, and even the clinking of glasses had gone still. Jessica's smile was stretched too wide, a crack of panic flickering in her eyes before she forced it down. She leaned toward James, whispering something quickly, but her eyes never left me. I could almost hear her thoughts. Don't you dare.
Don't ruin this for me.
I lifted my chin, took a slow breath, and let my voice ring out. I think tonight is the perfect time to finally tell the truth, I said. Gasps echoed across the room, low murmurs spreading like ripples in water.
People shifted in their seats.
I could feel their excitement, their hunger for drama. This was Jessica's crowd, her carefully curated audience, and I had just stolen their attention away from her.
Jessica's voice cut through the tension, sharp and controlled. Sarah, what are you doing? Sit down.
Her tone was sweet enough for the guests, but her eyes shot daggers at me.
I smiled faintly. No, Jessica. Not this time. I turned to the crowd.
I've kept quiet for years.
Too long, actually.
I let her insults slide. I let her lies build. I even let her pretend she was the victim in every story she's ever told you about me.
But tonight, I can't keep it in anymore. Because the truth isn't just about me.
It's about all of you, too. The murmurs grew louder, a wave of unsettled voices filling the ballroom. James frowned, glancing at Jessica, clearly confused. Linda, sitting near the front, looked pale, her eyes darting between me and her daughter like a cornered animal. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the folder I'd been carrying all night. My hands were steady as I opened it, the papers crisp and white under the lights. Jessica has lied to every single one of you, I said, holding up the documents. And I have proof. The silence that followed was sharp, almost painful. Jessica let out a laugh, forced, high-pitched, desperate.
This is ridiculous. She's jealous. Everyone knows that.
My sister has always been unstable. She gestured toward me, trying to summon the authority she usually wielded so easily.
But I saw it, the first crack in her facade.
I ignored her and pulled the first document free. Let's start with the cabin. At the mention of it, I saw a few people exchange looks. Everyone in our family knew about the cabin. It was supposed to be our shared inheritance, something passed down from my grandparents. For years, Jessica had told everyone I gave it up willingly because I couldn't afford the upkeep.
But that wasn't the truth.
This, I said, holding up the signed deed, is the original paperwork.
My name was on it. Legally. Equally.
But Rachel, I paused, letting the tension thicken. forged my signature. She filed it behind my back and claimed the cabin as hers.
Gasps broke out across the room, louder this time. Some of the older relatives leaned forward in shock.
James's aunt, the one Jessica had bragged to earlier, covered her mouth with her hand.
"That's a lie," Jessica snapped, her voice cracking just slightly.
She tried to laugh it off, but her face was red.
"She doesn't know what she's talking about."
I set the deed on the podium where everyone could see the official stamps and signatures.
"You can check for yourselves.
The date, the handwriting, it doesn't match.
And it doesn't end there."
Jessica moved quickly now, rushing forward a few steps.
"This is insane, Sarah.
Stop embarrassing yourself."
I turned toward her slowly.
"Embarrassing myself? Jessica, you've been stealing from me for years. Money from Mom's accounts, my share of the cabin, even spreading lies about my work just to make yourself look better. Should I keep going?" The crowd was buzzing now, voices rising, people craning their necks to get a better look at me, at her, at the papers I kept pulling out.
The spotlight wasn't on Jessica anymore. It was on me and the truth.
Linda suddenly stood up, her voice shaking. "Enough.
This is not the time or place." She tried to force a smile at the guests.
"You all know how sisters can be. Sarah is just emotional."
I looked straight at her.
"Emotional? Or honest?"
She froze.
Her hands trembled, and I realized she knew the dam had already broken. I pulled out another paper, this one a bank statement. "Here's the transfer Jessica made from Mom's savings account, money she used to pay for this very party."
The room erupted in gasps and whispers again.
Jessica's face twisted, her mask cracking wide open now.
"Shut up, Sarah," she hissed.
But I didn't.
I pressed harder.
"She pretends she's successful, that she worked for all this.
But she didn't. She stole it.
From me, from Mom, from everyone who ever trusted her." Jessica lunged forward, trying to snatch the papers from my hands, but James stepped in front of her instinctively. "Rachel, what is this?" he demanded, his voice low and tight.
His face had gone pale. "It's nothing," she said quickly, her voice shrill. "She's lying. She's always been jealous of me."
"You know that, James."
But James wasn't looking at her with belief anymore.
He was staring at the papers, at me, at the unraveling of the woman he thought he knew. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every guest was caught between disbelief and fascination.
No one moved. No one even touched their drinks. Jessica's laugh was hollow now.
"This is pathetic. You think you can ruin me with a couple of fake papers?" "Not just papers," I said, my voice cutting through her desperation.
"There are witnesses. Emails.
And people here tonight who know exactly what you've done." I glanced toward the back of the room, where a man in a dark suit stood quietly. He had been waiting for my signal, and now, he nodded. Jessica noticed him too. Her face was drained of color. "No," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. I gripped the microphone tighter. "You've built your life on lies, Jessica.
And tonight, it ends."
Before she could respond, the doors at the far end of the ballroom opened.
The sound was sharp, slicing through the murmurs.
Heads turned as two uniformed police officers walked in, their expressions serious. The room fell silent instantly, every whisper cut short, every eye locked on the men approaching with purpose. Jessica stumbled back a step, her breath quickening.
No, this isn't happening."
One of the officers pulled a folder from under his arm, the official seal catching the light. "We're here with documents pertaining to an active investigation."
The silence was deafening.
I could feel the electricity in the air, every single person holding their breath, watching the scene unfold. And then the officer's words landed like a hammer. "Jessica, you are under investigation." The morning after the engagement party felt unreal, like I had woken up inside someone else's life. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, texts from coworkers, friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. They all wanted the same thing: confirmation. Was it true? Did Jessica really forge documents, steal money, commit fraud? The news spread fast, faster than I could even process. Jessica had been taken out of the ballroom that night in tears, screaming about lies and conspiracies, clawing at James as he pulled away from her in disgust. Linda followed after, trying to spin some excuse about misunderstandings, but no one believed her anymore. The police didn't arrest Jessica then and there, but the investigation was active, and the word charges had already been whispered. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one trapped in the corner.
Jessica was the one exposed.
Linda was the one disgraced.
And me?
I was free. Still, it didn't hit me until the lawyer called 2 days later. His voice was calm, steady, almost smug when he said, "Sarah, it's official. The cabin is yours again." I sat in silence, staring at the peeling paint on the kitchen wall of my tiny apartment, not sure if I heard him right.
"Mine?" I asked.
"Yes." The court recognized the forged documents for what they were.
"You've reclaimed full ownership."
"Congratulations." It should have felt like triumph, like victory after a war I never signed up for. But all I felt was a shaky kind of relief, as if I had been holding my breath for years and only now realized I could exhale. When I hung up the phone, I cried. Not loud sobs, not the kind of crying Jessica would have mocked me for, but quiet tears that slipped down my cheeks, steady and unstoppable.
I cried for my dad, who built that cabin with his own hands.
I cried for the years Jessica stole from me, the years Linda chose her over me. And I cried for the girl I used to be, the one who thought keeping the peace was the same as being strong. The next weekend, I drove up to the cabin. The gravel road twisted the same way it always had, lined with trees that were just starting to turn golden with fall. My stomach knotted as I pulled up the long drive. The cabin stood exactly where it had always been, weathered but solid, the roof sloping like a tired old man's shoulders. I parked and sat in the car for a long moment, just staring.
Walking inside was like stepping into a memory.
The smell hit me first: wood, dust, and the faint lingering scent of pine from the cleaner my dad used to swear by. My fingers traced the grooves in the doorframe where my father had carved tiny marks each summer, measuring my height. I could almost hear his voice telling me not to slouch, that one day I'd be taller than Jessica. The living room was still cluttered with old furniture, though the place had clearly been neglected. Dust coated the mantel, cobwebs stretched across the corners, but under it all, it was still ours.
Mine.
I dropped onto the couch and let my body sink into the worn cushions. For the first time, I wasn't a guest here, wasn't someone begging for permission to enter. This place was mine again, and no one could take it away.
I closed my eyes and thought of my father. His laugh. His rough hands.
The way he used to sit on the porch with me, watching the sun sink behind the trees. "Don't let them break you, kid," he once told me. I didn't understand it then, but now those words echoed inside me, clear and sharp. I'd survived the breaking point.
And I was still here.
I spent the afternoon walking through each room, running my hand across every surface, opening closets and drawers, reminding myself this wasn't just a cabin, it was my history, my inheritance, my proof that Jessica couldn't erase me. As the sun dipped low, I built a fire in the stone hearth. The crackle of flames filled the silence, casting shadows on the walls. I sat there alone, wrapped in a blanket, letting the warmth soak into me.
For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. But peace never lasts long in my family.
It was late, close to midnight when I heard it.
A car pulling up the gravel drive.
My chest tightened instantly. I hadn't told anyone I was here, hadn't planned on visitors. Through the window, I saw the headlights cut across the yard before the engine died. The door opened, and a figure stepped out, hesitant, almost fragile in the way she moved.
Linda.
She looked smaller than I remembered, her shoulders slumped, her coat hanging off her frame. She walked slowly up the steps, each one creaking under her weight. I didn't move. I just sat there by the fire, staring at the door as her shadow loomed behind it.
The knock was soft, almost timid.
Then her voice followed, muffled through the wood. "Sarah, it's me."
I froze.
Another knock, a little louder. "Please, open the door. I need to talk to you." I should have felt satisfaction, maybe even triumph, seeing her like this. But what I felt was something heavier, something I didn't want to name.
I stood slowly, crossing the room. My hand hovered over the doorknob.
Her voice cracked, raw and pleading now.
"I'm sorry. I should have believed you. I should have protected you.
Please, forgive me." The fire popped behind me, the only sound in the silence that followed. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but inside, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt.
This was it. The moment I never thought would come.
The woman who had chosen Jessica over me every single time was now on my porch, begging for forgiveness. I gripped the doorknob, torn between everything I had lost and everything I had just regained. And in that moment, one question burned in my mind. Was revenge enough? Or was it finally time to walk away for good? Sometimes life comes full circle in ways we never see coming. The same door that once shut me out is now the one my mother is knocking on, begging to be let in. But the truth is, forgiveness isn't always about them, it's about what we're willing to carry and what we're ready to finally put down.
Now I want to hear from you.
If you were in my shoes, would you open that door and forgive her? Or would you walk away for good?
Drop your answer in the comments below, I'll be reading them.
And if you love seeing stories where the underdog takes their power back, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.